This is the Harmonic Motion Podcast, a place where you, dear listener, can join with automotive aftermarket professionals as they delve into and discuss the matters which matter.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Harmonic Motion Podcast. I'm delighted to welcome guests into TTHQ who are here for another reason, but they've been mad enough to be cajoled, volunteer to come and say a few words about the stuff we talk about. So without much further ado, we're going to kick off and get going with this next thrilling instalment. So our first guest up is well-known face around technical topics, Mr. Rob Drinkwater. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, folks. Rob Drinkwater. Most of you know me from previous podcasts that we've done, but I do a lot of training here at Tech Topics. Got a small garage workshop just in the Brecon Beacons in Wales. Mostly deal with other garages in terms of doing diagnostic and aircon type work for them, but lots of experience in lots of other areas within the motor trade as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Welcome. And next to Rob, we've got Marc.
Like folks, I'm Marc, automotive master technician.
Woohoo.
Have been for the last 5 years. What would I say? I've been on my 20 years automotive journey and then just progressed through the years from there. Got my own garage now, getting involved in diagnostics and just everything automotive related.
Yeah, great
and
stuff.
Quite enjoy it. Yeah, enjoy what I do now. Haven't always enjoyed it, but as we do more of this and more master tech stuff, and networking,
yes,
it makes everything a lot easier.
It does, yeah. The people you know, yeah. There's that famous old saying, isn't it, about your net worth is linked to your network.
Yeah.
In terms of the things you get, the advantages of the people that you meet. Yeah.
100% agree.
No, awesome. And whereabouts in the country are you
So
based
I'm
in?
Scotland, Aberdeenshire.
Yep. Lovely.
Probably one of the first people from up north to come down, but there's a lot more folk I've met recently
Yes.
over the last 5 years travelling down on the journey.
Absolutely.
I've flown, driven, and yesterday I took a train down. That was the first train journey.
It was good.
Quite enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Just straight into Bristol and down to Bridgewater. No problem.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, good way to travel. I do like the train, as long as they're kind of running. I think we run the gauntlet of strikes at the minute. You could have a flash strike, but great, awesome. Thanks for volunteering your time to be here. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to you contributing to the conversation. Okay, next up we've got Terry.
Yeah, I'm Terry Stokes. I'm from Sherborne, Dorset. Been doing this around 20 years now. Worked for the same garage since I left school.
Brilliant.
But I have branched out and do a bit for other garages and my own private work. So
Yeah, nice. No, good stuff. Yeah, good. And all the way from Sherborne in Dorset. So you're probably the most local, apart from Liv and I. Yeah, good stuff. Well, lovely to see you, Terry. Thanks for giving up your evening to come and share your thoughts and views. I'm looking forward to what you got to contribute to the conversation.
Okay.
So welcome. And then next to Terry, we've got Simon.
Simon Parkinson. I relative newcomer to the trade. I opened my own garage about December 21. Made a sideways move into the trade. And things are going very well. I've got more work than I can cope with.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're good, I think, isn't it? Yeah, you've hit a real niche there with the garage that you've opened, and you don't do everything on everything, do you?
No, it's like diagnostic and electrical, and a very small amount of related minor mechanical work. I don't do anything major mechanical. So, the mechanical work I do is only as a result of the vehicle being there and I've spotted something and it's within the capability of what I can do. Yeah. Otherwise I'll refer that work out to one of the trusted local garages.
Yeah. So you've got a bit of a relationship going with people that give you work that you've kind of...
Yeah. I mean, nobody's good at everything. And like within the local garages, you've got different people. I was saying different areas of work to different garages. Some love engine and gearbox work. Some, general servicing. I know who does what, and choose accordingly.
Yeah. No, awesome, great stuff. And you're booking weeks and weeks ahead.
Yeah,
I saw some of your posts on Facebook.
Yeah, so I'm currently about just over 3 weeks. Once it got to a month, I had to stop taking work in because at that point, then you get a lot of people that can't wait that long and then they don't turn up.
Yeah. That's the trick, isn't it? Yeah. No, good stuff. So welcome to the chat, Simon, and I'm really looking forward to your contribution to the conversation. Brilliant. And then finally, most definitely, last but not least, we've got Marc.
Yeah, Marc Roberts from Cardiff. Run a small vehicle workshop there. Specialise in diagnostics, but generally carrying out all manner of repairs.
Yeah.
I've been coming back and forth technical topics now for a number of years, and love every minute of it. Basically,
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
just feel the need to learn more and more.
It makes a difference, I think, with the learning hopefully gives you that advantage in being able to do either stuff more quickly or be less vexed with the stuff you do. That's kind of the payoff, isn't it, with the training?
Yeah,
It's a facilitator.
Becoming efficient.
Yeah, efficient and effective and reducing the curveballs. Yeah. No, it was great to see you. And thanks for giving up your evening, Marc,
No
and
problem.
joining in.
My pleasure.
Really, really appreciate it. So we're going to start with our first question. So if you've watched or listened to the podcast before, we start off with very good intentions and a list of things we're going to talk about, and it sort of goes to madness and mayhem shortly after. So we're going to start with the first question. I'm going to open it up to Marc, actually, and question centres around, in your perspective, so your personal view, what sets a good garage apart from a great one? So if you've got a garage that's kind of doing it, what would it take to be awesome? Thinking in terms of what they might do for their client base, and also what their capabilities or technical skills would be. If in your experience, if you're doing, you've seen a lot of things, you've got a lot of friends about the place, and in your experience of your local trade, kind of what would you say sets a garage apart?
In simple terms, a good garage to customer, whether that be trade or general public, is if you've got a problem, can we provide a solution to your problem for a fee? And that's the black and white of it.
Yeah.
But as we delve into that, it's in many forms, whether it be the access to technical information, the technical knowledge and ability, and then the tooling and equipment that you have to be able to enable that solution.
Yeah. So it involves kind of, we talked there about resources, so making sure that they've got the capability, in inverted commas, or the hardware and maybe the data to be able to do that job. What about the operators? If we think about, the trade is bemoaning the fact that finding technicians is very difficult. What's your view about technician or resources in garages? Even some garages might be geared up. There's probably maybe a gap in.
So for technicians, you've got to enable them to be able to do their job for a start, and then pay them a fair amount of money, a fair wage to do the job, and then I suppose then train youngsters as well, to take them up through the ranks to be able to enable you to make money and then in turn pay them a decent wage from it.
Yeah, it's kind of virtuous relationship with a garage owner and the team within it. Yeah, you've hit on a couple of good things there, about financing it. So charging your client the right money, so your end user has to be paying a proper price for the job. Yeah, because it starts from that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then in turn, if you're seeing a good income from that, you can then go and access, whether it be special tooling, whether it be dealer tooling, and then paying the right subscriptions for the information.
Yeah. And then paying your team. So if you're charging enough for the end user, you've got money in the pot to pay a decent wage. Yeah. And of course, the wage is a big part of it. But of course, with all new equipment comes some level of learning and training, which I think a lot of people I think good garages to great garage maybe buy a new tool thinking that's going to be the answer, and maybe forego training and forego the learning phase in the garage. And I was speaking to somebody recently who went down a track and they spent a lot of time themselves trying to do it, didn't really key the guys up, didn't really train anyone, really, really beat themselves trying to do it and failed, and it's pushed into the corner. So this thing that they thought were going to be the answer, missing ingredient was probably training and implementation planning. Yeah. And I think what you've said there, Marc, that's a decent part of it, isn't it?
Planning and delegation and enabling the right folk. So it can't just be one person.
No.
You've got to enable everyone for success and setup.
Yeah, that's it.
And then to share that knowledge with others as well.
Yeah, share the knowledge. I think there's also probably something else in it. If I reflect when I was working in the workshop, kind of my discussion, I worked in a few independents and I worked in a couple of franchises. And as I got older, and I'm still in my early 20s at this stage, but as I got older, when I went for the job interview, I kind of said, I don't put me on services. I don't want to be doing monotonous interim services. If that's all you've got, I'm kind of going to go to the next opportunity, because I'll drive you mad by your work driving me mad. So have you got any real tricky stuff, the deep stuff? And that was evident in that case. The place I went to work for did have loads of that stuff, and that was kind of my thing. And I think there's a lot of that with a high-performing team, is that you can give the right person the right kind of work. Now, to get me wrong, there are in that garage setup that we had there were guys that were smashing out services and warranty work, hand over fist. Yeah. But there's also a role in that job to pick up all the really tricky stuff that. Is there a lot of money in? No, but there's that challenge in. So I think maybe, kind of streaming jobs to people. If you think about garages that do they ever ask the technician the kind of work they want to be doing?
No, but they should be, because we'll book in more of that work, or we'll go and seek some of that work, and what do you find your skill sets are, and then areas you then want to improve on as a technician. People might just be happy doing MOTs day in, day out. If you're happy, mate, just crack on.
And the world needs those people, doesn't it?
We need you, and we appreciate you, because the next buddy will do clutches, timing belts, happy with that. Yeah. Next guy won't touch servicing, wants to do diag, wants to get stuck in. Yeah. So it's the team and the family contribution from everyone then sets you up for success.
It does.
But I don't know how many people think like that.
No. Yeah. I think a lot of people may be driven. I don't know how you guys find it in your experience then, about does a garage seek particular work, or do you kind of take the stuff, the phone rings, and we'll end up recircling back to marketing in a minute, because the phone rings and there's a job there. I think the garage owner kind of looks at the diary, looks at the people, sees what spare labour capacity he's got, is taking on the job because it fits that slot, or there's money to be made, and maybe not proactively seeking work, kind of being reactive. The phone will ring and we'll do it, rather than going, in that case, we said there, Mark, if you're streaming diag, that you're proactively maybe marketing your business to do that, to help your star performer perform and be loving his job.
But then in turn, it keeps them enthused. Absolutely. And there's work there for them, and they won't maybe stray away anywhere else. Steering the ship in the right direction.
I think a lot of garage owners that I talk to, particularly those that maybe are less aware of the business side or the people side, think it's all about money. When if you ask a technician, there is being paid a fair wage, but one of the reasons they might leave is because the work doesn't quite fit what they want to do. And they might be persuaded to leave not for a better paying job, for one with a different work mix. So I think that's the synergy of feeding people the right kind of work. It may be
there's simple stuff. You can clean nice heated workshops. How many are there? There's not. It's few and far between. So I would pick that over a value of money any day, I think.
Yeah, I think the conditions, aren't they? Heated and lighting, nice floor, good array of tools. Yeah. I mean, it's depressing in some cases. When I think back to some of the places I've either worked for directly, or in my job as the roving mobile diagnostic technician I've gone to, where I'm depressed in the hour I spent in there. Like, it's all a little bit. There's stuff hanging off the ceiling, and it's all the funny colours, and there's a smell, and there's 2 inches of grime. You're going, God, they're really busy and they're doing all right, but they kind of miss the bigger picture of the environment's quite important, isn't conducive to the kind of work. And I think customers pick up on that as well. I pick on that as a tech. I wouldn't want to work there. I'm thinking, what does your client think who's bringing their shiny car in there? Yeah.
You can generally tell the quality of a workshop by the toilet.
It's good.
The state of the toilet.
Yeah. Very good, yes, yeah. And if they've got more than one. Yeah, one of the places I worked in had a bucket. There was no running water. There's a bucket for peeing in, there's a bucket for washing your hands in. Don't get them mixed up if it got a bit dark outside.
Lovely.
But that was considered there. I'm talking back in the late 80s then, but that was kind of considered. And there were even probably 10 years later, they were still going to places that had buckets. There was no toilet.
Character building, we're calling that.
Well, I don't know what we're calling it, dark ages, aren't we? But and I suppose that the conditions then, how would you get a young person that had a scintilla of sense to go and work in a place that's using a bucket to pee in?
There's other options, is there?
Yeah. I mean, it's not really about the job. The conditions do affect that. So yeah, I think setting a good garage apart. There's a lot of stuff we've covered there, but it's not just about money. No, it has to be about streaming stuff. Yeah.
And I think it comes back to also you saying about conditions and so on. What else are they offering? What and I'm not talking about healthcare and that sort of thing, but progression, training, and other resources that they can give you to do your job and be better at your job.
Yeah.
And what's their long-term plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Where's the business going?
Yeah, the business and yourself. So where are you in 5 years in our business? How can we enable you to get to where you want to be?
Yeah, be the best you can be. And have that scope to grow. Or, looking at garage owners' perspective, what's their? Do they have an exit plan? And could your team be taking over your business in the bigger picture? Is that the way you're going, building up to share in the benefit? Like, you're going to want to retire someday. If you've got somebody that's in your business that's working well, does that not make the ideal relationship that you're handing it over, kind of not giving it away, but they're buying it from you? But I think if you think bigger picture about positivity in the team and encouraging others and working not in a necessarily a boss kind of relationship, but you're going, the future of this place is built on younger people. Yeah. They could be within the business or without. Yeah, but you're right. You might, as Terry said, you might be looking at that as potential. Am I growing in that spot, or am I in a cul-de-sac? It's going to get no better than this, and that's always the risk, isn't it?
Is there any employee-owned garages? Like John Lewis is employee-owned.
Yeah, there's one that springs to mind who's up in Scotland. Graham, is it? I don't want to say the name of it now.
Graham Anderson.
Yeah, did it's like an employee trust to take over the business. Yeah, and that's one of the ones I heard about most recently, which is everyone's prospering, like the John Lewis partnership. We're all in this together. It can be quite tricky, I think, from a management perspective of who's in control. You have to be probably quite sound about your organisational structure. You're the manager, you're the service manager, you're the parts manager, you're the managing director. Somebody has got to be, even if you're equally in terms of owners, has to be the responsible one for steering it. Yeah. Because, it needs some direction. But I think it's a brilliant way, if you're looking at, as a garage owner, thinking about where does it all end for you, that employee share ownership of the garage basically benefits and prospers and hopefully grows with the people that have helped you on your way.
It's that get out plan, is it? Because you see so many people just wearing on in the years with no exit strategy, whether that be sole ownership, partnership. Yeah,
true.
Where do we stop?
Where do we stop? True. And I think what happens in a little bit, of that scenario, that when you're 55 or 60, you probably ought to have been making the plans at 50 of what was going to happen in 10 years to get it lined up. I see a lot of garages and owners that come to that point, and the garage is either really over-invested with equipment and the setup, but they're kind of geared around that one person. That if they disappear, it's not really a systemized business. So who can take it over? Secondly, you find, I think, one of two ways. I've not seen many in the middle, but they've either been under-invested at the point of sale, so the stuff's all scrap, really, and what are you selling then? Well, you kind of got an empty shed. If you're renting it, you've got a customer list and a load of scrap and a shed you've rented. What's the business worth? And a lot of people look at the multipliers and go, the business is worth £1 million or £500,000 or £250,000, and you go, based on the turnover, if nothing else changes, you're right. The future earnings could be on that limit. But with these variabilities of you not being there, the master in chief. Yeah, it's kind of an empty shell.
No future bookings, no nothing.
No.
So how can you put a value on it?
Yeah, very difficult. You're selling a dream. And I think that's where the maybe foresighted business owners amongst us are probably looking at, okay, what happens? Where does that end up? What's the plan? And it's an interesting one. And that can be used as a real positive motivator to your team, knowing that they can step into your shoes because they know what your plan is. Yeah. And they know they're part of the succession.
It's carrying on that driving force to foresee the goal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so, the business owner management and then position in the garage is probably what makes the difference, I think. And probably top technicians are finding it difficult to be motivated if they're not bought into because it is more than just a job, isn't it? It is, you have to be kind of into the future scape. You need to push yourself out of there. If you think, talking to you guys, how much time do we spend investing in learning stuff that isn't paid for time?
Quite a bit, yeah.
Because we love the job and kind of love the thing we do, so we're willing to spend those few hours
at home studying,
YouTube.
2 or 3 hours a night. And
if you've got passion, it becomes more than just a job, really.
It absolutely, it does, and that passion is needed. The technical aspects of what we've been doing here last today and what we'll be doing tomorrow kind of is that pinnacle of you have to be in it to know that deep technical stuff to succeed. So it can't just be a job. When you look at other people I know that are probably doing a 9-to-5 job, you talk about learning off the job and kind of going, what are you talking about? I rock up there at 9 and at 4:55 I'm packing these things up and I'm away, and I'm kind of doing this job in this box. I don't ask me to do any more. That's me.
Yeah.
They don't want to stretch, and mechanicing and technicianing and really the higher level diag stuff isn't like that. It is probably a vocation, isn't it? You've got to be in it.
Yeah.
You got to have passion for it. And there's, if you don't have the passion, you don't really want to learn. It's a job. You might be forced to learn things, but unless you actually want to learn them, 9 times out of 10, you won't take them in or take them on board.
No, and forced learning really doesn't work, does it? If, you have to have really the absorption of the new knowledge is because you love it and you want to do it. You want to do more of it. Yeah, so it is. It is an interesting one, isn't it? That it is more than a job from a garage owner and a technician point of view. They both need each other, and they both got slightly different objectives. And wherever that meets, where the garage owner sees the benefit of the tech sees the benefit of the post business and feels part of it. You get that kind of. It's more than the sum of the parts. You're both driving on and gaining and winning. Where there's that dissonance, like the garage owner kind of sees it as just a business, and the technician is just an employee. That's where I'm thinking a good garage and an awesome garage are probably differing. If we think of some of the great garages we know, they're in that second camp where it is about the team. Yeah. Technical skills, yeah. And customer service, yeah. Cool stuff. Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So, yeah, thanks for sharing. In terms of new stuff then, headlines yesterday, because we're in the last week of Jan here, we're about DeepSeek. Does anyone know what DeepSeek is? Chinese AI that's disrupted the whole wide world. No, you've already
turn the kind of the computer industry and AI on its head and wiped billions off of some of the AI companies' worth.
So what do we know? Do you know about ChatGPT? Have you heard that? Yeah. So your AI. If you a large language model that sits in the internet, you ask it questions and it comes up with the answer, kind of moving towards this artificial intelligence bit. Yeah, I'm interested to know what we think about that in the context of our jobs and our businesses. But yeah, DeepSeek's really hot news. What was the reason, Rob, that the stock market in the States particularly is so most of the technology is centric in the US. So the big companies, Anthropic and OpenAI, Microsoft, those guys that are all in that sphere have spent gazillions and bazillions of dollars in investing in their models, and they've kind of kept them closed. Meta are in it, so the people behind Facebook. Twitter have got one called Grok, and some of those are open source where anyone can see what's in. You can download it and run it yourself on your local machine. Some of them are closed, so OpenAI are probably the leader, and they ironically went from open, which is OpenAI, my business is open, to closed, kind of had a bit of a coup, and the guy took it over, Sam Altman, closed it, got Microsoft involved, and is trying to build his own future predominantly, and keeping the technology under wraps. And then DeepSeek, a Chinese company. The Chinese are kind of been scuppered by the Yanks, and the Yanks are leading the way with technology. The mega chips that you need to drive this technology on is run by a company called NVIDIA, who started off with graphics cards and chips. And it turns out the processor type that NVIDIA make, the GPU, can carry out many more calculations for the set period of time. So anyway, this is an American company. They restricted supply of these GPUs to the Chinese because the Americans want to win the war of AI. So DeepSeek. Talk us about DeepSeek. So they're a Chinese company. What happened?
Well, they've come up with a new technology that has kind of trounced what the Yanks are doing and have made it free out there for everyone to use.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, the likes of NVIDIA and other companies involved in this, their virtual worth, if you want to call it that, because it's only what their stock is worth. It's not actually what the company's worth. It's the stock and bonds that the company's worth have just fallen through the floor because all of a sudden everyone's gone, well, what advantage have you got now? All of a sudden, are you worth what you were worth? And just knocked billions off their stock in overnight.
Overnight, yeah. No, if you look at the stats behind it, one of the reasons for that is those AI companies have spent millions, if not billions, in developing their models to get to that level. This DeepSeek company then have spent $6.75 million training a model which is open source to everyone, and it can perform almost to the same levels as the closed models that have had gazillions of dollars spent on them. So kind of that's what's dropped it. That's what's made that relevant. So that's a really interesting story about perceived value, but the Chinese have got this open source model. What do you think in terms of, I'll start with Marc, are you using AI at all? Have you used it?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Not even a little dibble dabble?
No.
How many
only
nickels make a
up here
muckle?
when we had a little touch on the chat GP.
Yeah, chat GPT, yeah.
But that's about it, really.
Yeah, it can be quite good if you... One of the things I think you've got to be good at is asking it the right question. Yeah, because
knowing how to get the most out of it.
Yeah, really knowing how to get the most out of it. Yeah. But it can be useful. Simon, have you had much to do with the ChatGPT or the AI world?
No.
No, not needed it. You are your own AI, really. Let's be honest, aren't you? Yeah, you've not felt the need to have a play. No, and the kids aren't at it.
No, I'd say when you get the some of these things that come up on the Google pages with like AI summary, it's irrelevant junk, especially for our field.
Yeah. So we don't think we're going to get usurped. So the master technician mind isn't going to be replaced by ChatGPT at the minute. So you could go with if you're a car driver, you could go with your P20EE fault code from your Amazon scanner and find out why your AdBlue warnings are coming on. We're not under threat. We're not feeling the pressure yet.
No. You get 100 different outputs from AI anyway when you do.
Yeah. Well, say you get people coming up to the garage and say, well, instead of saying, well, it said on the forum, say, well, ChatGPT said.
Ask Google to fix your car.
Yeah, funny, isn't it? Yeah, and it's become popular. I think a lot of people have seen that in the news and are sort of using it for a bit. We use it here. I'm going to look over to Liv. Liv uses it a bit. And I think it's awesome as a tool. But again, I think maybe the motoring public have probably got the wrong end of the stick. They think it's going to be giving you much more info than it is. It's going to be a bit like the AA man or the REC man. I've got this printout and they said it was the alternator and kind of batteries knackered. How you transfer or move them away from the incorrect conclusion to the correct one can be quite hard work when they've got an anchor on. I've got it off ChatGPT and that's the cleverest AI in the world, so I want you to fit this sensor on that car. It adds something to the mix, probably replacing forums, isn't it? Or the bloke down the pub is now ChatGPT. Yeah. Maybe that's it.
I've used it for...
Sorry.
I've used it for sort of sophisticated letters or some contracts and things like that. I've used it for a few things. So, and my wife seemed to enjoy using it in her training business. So, but I hadn't heard of it until we came to the training here. So,
nice. Yeah, I think for those things... contracts are brilliant actually. If you can cut and paste the contract in there, and one of the things about your ChatGPT or the AI model is you kind of have to give it a role. So you have to, at the start, you say your role in this is to act as a solicitor on behalf of me. I'm going to give you a business contract, and I want you to point out the negatives in that from my perspective, and it'll kind of run through that and chunter out and go, right, these are the clauses in there which could see you in trouble. And so it's actually interesting that contracts, in terms of contract law, there is a subjectiveness to the law, but there's also a heap of rules, and it's actually quite well defined. So ChatGPT works well within a rule set, and they think that that's one of the areas that could come under pressure is the legal profession. That once all the knowledge is in the machine and it can kind of join the links out, that you can basically post a question, and if you say UK case law, it kind of refers it to that in that paradigm. So that is quite scary that you can look. So did it give you a bit of a steer on the contract? It
pretty much wrote it for me, apart from there was a few terms I wanted it to add in, and then I just asked it to rewrite it a bit more sophisticatedly, and it wrote out fine. Tweaked a few things, but other than that, it would have taken me probably about 3 hours to write it and done it in 5 minutes.
It's amazing, isn't it? It is amazing. I think one of the other really positive uses I've seen for it are the dreaded 1-star reviews, where your dander's up and you're kind of champing at the bit now. You think, what an arsehole, what have they done to me, giving me a 1-star review, and kind of objectivity could go out, then you want to give them a piece of your mind. Where it's quite good, I find, and we do it a little bit on the service advisor training, if you get a 1-star review, to think about how you might respond to it. You're not going to use the output, but it kind of reframes your thought processes, and is almost like if you had a mentor or somebody you could talk to, it's quite nice to kind of reflect off that and go, this person's written this thing as a review to my garage. How do you think I could respond by not being weak or giving in, but by also just kind of illustrating my perspective? And it can come up with a response. So I think it's useful in all sorts of weird ways that you don't necessarily think. Maybe not fixing your car, but kind of how am I going to respond to this review?
I think a way that a lot of businesses within our industry even could use AI is simply for things like social media posts, Facebook posts, and that sort of thing. In my wife's business, where it's a retail business, we use AI quite heavily to assist us in writing daily posts to go out. And a lot of garages could do exactly the same thing. They could be using that to write sort of constructive and different posts rather than having to kind of make them themselves.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Rob. It is a good point. We do a little bit of that with one of the marketing courses, and we talk about people updating their Facebook status the next time they're in the toilet, because that's kind of when they stopped doing stuff and they go, oh, I haven't been on Facebook for a while, and they put together a post whilst they're sat on the loo, and they kind of go through the photos and they look, oh, there's something I took off a car, so there's a dual mass clutch and flywheel, or a water pump with his ass hanging out, and they go, I know, I'll post about that because it's in my camera, and I'll write this thing when I'm on the toilet and kind of send it out to the world thinking that's going to do. So yeah, I think more professional from that. Really, Rob, I think it goes right from make me a marketing plan for the next 4 weeks, give me a theme for each of the weeks, write me 2 posts and suggest a photo, and kind of boom, all of a sudden you've got, that would have been 30 or 40 hours work for somebody in marketing, and it's more or less done it.
Yeah.
You can customize it and tune it, but some of the power that you get from the stuff you find difficult because it's not maybe our core thing, it gives you a really good leg up into going, right, do you know what, that's now not mad, it's not rubbish, it's not posting about scrap, and it's not done while you're on the toilet. It's all got to be better on that.
It just reinvents it. It's a bit more fresh.
Yeah.
Because you see, that's what happens. You see photos of broken bits, and then the apology for not posting in ages.
Yeah.
It's not going to work, boys. It's not going to float, is it?
No.
Yeah.
No.
One of the things we do is we have a calendar that shows all the world this day and that day and the other day, World Women's Day, World AIDS Day, whatever. And we say to the AI, produces a post based on our website so that it knows exactly what we do and everything, based around World Women's Day and our haberdashery shop. And it produces an AI created Facebook post that covers all of that, and it makes it relevant then as well, because there's a reason for posting, because it's World AIDS Day, World Women's Day, whatever the day is, that's relevant then.
Yeah.
So it sort of catches people's eye because it's relevant to today.
Yeah, relevant for your business. I love that, because you can refer them to a resource. So if you're referring them to the Busy Pins and Needles website, and it looks through what you do, very quick. That's a great resource that it learns that's your focus and then kind of puts that into perspective. And the same with garages, of course. If your garage website's any good, it can do the same thing. So I think it's a great time saver. Probably. Yeah. I don't know. Does anyone feel doom and gloomy about the AI? Is it going to take over? Are we going to see Skynet and the Terminator coming into? Is our robot Hoover's going to strangle us in the night?
You just don't know, do you? But I'm here for the journey anyway. See what happens.
I did hear about something about an AI program creating other AI programs the other day. I did hear about that.
Yeah. Self-replicating.
Yeah.
Self-replicating. They reckon it's happened. It's escaped, and it's residing in other places.
They're breeding already.
Breeding.
Dangerous.
They can code themselves. I read one of the articles about the moral dilemma of the AI. It doesn't have any morals, and they got one of the AIs to play a game of chess against another AI, and they explained to it how this chess game worked, and the AI worked out in chess there's a naming convention. So where your pieces are on the board are kind of stored in a temporary place, so that when you make a move, it updates that record, and then the other person knows where it's moved. And the AI cheated, and it made the virtual representation of the board, not the actual, seem like an unwinnable position, and it made the chess game quit. So it hacked the storage file of how the board was shaped up. So and they didn't tell it, and it kind of said you need to win this game, and it did. And it obviously it doesn't know that cheating like that's wrong. It just came up with a solution creatively
by any means possible.
By any means possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there are some interesting warning signs. I think we're too far past it. It's escaped and it's out there, and I think we're going to have to ride out the storm of whatever that might look like. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thinking of it from benefits. I listened to another podcast where one of the Tech Topics alumni was talking about a job that he did and managed. He couldn't remember or recall about an EGR validation technique, so flagging an EGR fault code, why kind of reasons why this is set. And I think it was on a Renault. Actually, it was Mick, from Shakely Motors, and he'd asked AI the question about how on this particular brand of vehicle does it calculate mass airflow or EGR flow, and it sort of came up with a temperature. It came up with a loose sort of description of how it worked, and it was actually what was wrong. So there was a temperature sensor that wasn't changing with the EGR flow, and it kind of just didn't answer the question, but gave him a bit of a steer because he mental block or couldn't quite work out. So again, helping with a thought process, more so than doing the job, but really sort of nudging you in the right direction. So I think that's where I think the benefit is short term is supplementing the human brain power, asking it a decent question and getting a nudge when you need a bit of inspiration. Yeah. So
it's good at doing repetitive things as well. If you want it to do repetitive calculations or whatever, movement of files from here to there or whatever, you can tell it to do so, and it just gets on with it. You haven't got to manually do stuff yourself. You can tell it to do it. But going back to what you were saying about the legal documents, it's going to happen that the legal people will be making big challenges to the use of AI and to what extent AI is actually plagiarism.
Yes,
and that's where the legal people will then come into it and. Almost to protect their own profession, they'll be then trying to get AI banned, controlled, regulated, whatever, to protect their own profession.
Will it devalue their labour rate?
Could it? Yeah, could it devalue the labour rate?
For sure, yeah. Could almost put them out of a job, really, couldn't it, the legal profession?
Possibly, yeah. I think there are definitely some areas that would be. I think if you're in a doing trade, I don't see robots springing arms out to fix clutches and stuff. No. If you're in a thinking business where there's kind of, you look, solicitors and lawyers are kind of into the same. If they're writing a contract, it's contract law. It might have a variant, whether it's products and services, whether it's a consumer to consumer, business to business. But there's a kind of framework exists for all that stuff, and I think that's one of the dangers where there isn't. There is a framework that exists, which is kind of not doing. It's more thinking work. They're probably jobs under a bit of jeopardy. But then we think a little bit about Tesla. Has anyone seen the Tesla? We love a bit of Tesla because of the electric cars. Have you seen their robot? The Tesla robot.
A couple of videos, yeah.
25 or 20 to 25,000 quid, and you've got an automaton which is linked, being able to do stuff now, and it kind of hooks into the old artificial intelligence, so it can decide what to do. And I think watching, of course, the guy Elon Musk is out there, and he left field. He's a way ahead forward thinker. That maybe in the bigger scheme of things, if robots are being essentially it's a, 6 months wage for a skilled person. You can have a robot. You can have 2 robots then for the wage that are lifting and carrying stuff. It's kind of scary when you look at that. Where is it going to go? Yeah.
But we're probably again into more sort of repetitive jobs rather than, if you like, the skilled jobs where it's different every time.
Yeah.
In the more repetitive world, that's where robots come in.
Yeah.
Which, let's face it, we've had robots.
Yeah.
In factories and so on, doing repetitive jobs, building cars, and built by robots and so on.
Doing potential human roles of robots, but now we've got a human robot.
A human robot, doing interim services maybe in my world. Yeah, no, this is interesting. I wonder, where that's going. Have you seen any AI in the Diag yet? In kind of scan tools. So if we pick the major brand scan tools, anyone fettling with the AI? Have you seen any?
There is. I've seen it. It used to refer to Google or whatever. Now it's referring to
advanced
AI.
Now. Come on a little bit.
Yeah, it's.
I haven't played from yet, but I know there's a good few out there. Yeah, it's incorporated it now.
Yeah,
I know some of the sort of Chinese scan tools, when they see certain fault codes and so on, pluck from Google and presumably AI now. Doing the same thing. They pluck explanations from owners club websites.
But it's just the data. Like, what data is there? Like, how much data have you supplied in relation to this fault code? Because the fault code alone is not leading you anywhere.
No.
Data source.
Data source.
The quality of the data. Are you basing that on good solid data, or if it's an advanced Google? I mean, have a look at the ChatGPT bombings, because it is quite good. But you can't just ask a naked question. You can't, as Rob said, with his perspective there about doing social media posts and referring it to your website so it can kind of get its thoughts in shape. The same thing with a fault code. I've done some experimentation with the AI where if you get it in the mindset of a technician and you ask it lots of questions and kind of get it into that thought process on the chat and then fire in a question, the results are much better than if you were 1 minute talking about how do you make the world's best Yorkshire puddings and then flick in, okay, I've got a low flow on my low pressure EGR, what could it be? Kind of more eggs is going to be the answer and a bit more flour, but to the wrong question. And so, you can get it thinking on a theme, and they call it kind of prompt engineering, where you get it into that thought. But it is based on the base of data. And I think the Chinese guys were using Google for the help page, weren't they? When you press the help, it took you to Google, kind of type in whatever it was, because that wasn't referring back to the tool. It was kind of going out to the web and looking at stuff. So, I wonder on the qualities, what area I'm really interested in keeping tabs on to see whether it will help. Very interesting. Whether AI will help us out of a hole or not. Cool stuff. Next question up in our question list is, as we went around the room then, we got a feeling that a couple of you guys are doing more diag. We'll float the question about electric vehicles and where that sits in your landscape. Are you doing any? Are you seeing any? And then what I wanted to try and think about was if you've gone a bit narrower on something, has that worked for you? Was it the right thing to do? Or do you think that the generalist perspective of trying to do lots of things on lots of things is the right way forward? And if you're a garage owner looking at the futurescape going, do you know what, it's doing everything on everything is difficult, or I want to specialise, or I was specialising and now I want to generalise. What's the discussion around that? What kind of thoughts, Mark? I know because you're kind of specialising in diag whilst you're trying to do the service and maintenance.
I'm pushing more for the diag work, definitely. And also another thing on my mind going forward is obviously being sort of VAG, sort of specialist, more so for the programming than the diag. There's a great, broad range of that market available on out on the streets and what's coming through my door. So I think going down, the road into the future, it is going to be increasingly difficult to cover all brands, just because of secure gateways and data availability and product knowledge, just how things move on so fast. I mean, you can't cover all bases. I think specialising would be the way in the future. Or being a bit narrow in some stuff, because you can't cut off if your main revenue stream is service repair and everything. It sounds your model there a bit where you're specialising on the bit you really want to do, so you're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, keeping on the service and maintenance, but going, I can be good at the VAG, diag, and the coding and programming, which is quite difficult. Again, that's quite wise, isn't it? They've got a good market share. The Volkswagen Group, I think, make up about 15% of all cars. So niching into that's an interesting one. So I was dealer level on Peugeot, Citroen, DS, but obviously with the Stellantis merger lately, it's just thrown that into a disarray.
We've had the same issue. It's quite tricky. I know some guys have got login sorted now, but getting tickets is still proving difficult, isn't it? We had one of the Stellantis courses that we had to postpone because of that. We couldn't, server access was torched. You can't get in, you can't buy a ticket. Raise an email and you don't even get a laughy smiley face back. It kind of disappears into the ether of get stuffed. I don't know what country it's now based in. It's Stellantis. Is that still French? Is it? Le get stuffed. I don't know what the phrase is.
I think they're basing the servers out of Italy, actually.
Italy, it could be right. Because of that big FCA thing, isn't it? They're moving towards the micropod as a platform.
Everything defaults back to the Fiat platform. I
Does,
think.
doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. And ironically, I've got a Fiat login and I've had it for years, and I've got the PSA login, and now I'm stuck between the both. So I don't have either. It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
You managed to sort the login, but can't get onto Diagbox.
No.
There's no link between them at the moment.
No. It's separated. Yeah. Somebody switched off the server, I think, to save a few quid, and then I realised it's broken, or they've sacked the person that was doing it, and they switched it on the way out. So yeah, it's bonkers. And I think crazy how long it's been months, isn't it?
Yeah, 3 months at least. Yeah.
And we can't do that PSA stuff. And I know a few lads have been posting on their chat groups and what have you. No more PSA. We just can't help you for the minute. It's mad, isn't it? And
yeah, I've postponed a good few programming jobs and software updates just because
can't do it.
I can't do it at the moment.
You can't rely on it. That's the trouble, isn't it? You just can't think. Well, I'm going to book that in because it's unreliable.
Yeah, it's hit and miss.
From the dealer side, like, they'll be okay. They're still in the.
I have no idea.
Some dealers have been struggling as well. Apparently,
I know
some dealers have had access
woes,
problems.
Or they've managed to get on, and if you're doing a software update, so it won't complete or won't even start.
Just don't understand how they got it so wrong, really. But
lack of planning probably, something to do with it. But it drops us, and I think that's a really valid point with the PSA. Imagine that was 95% of your work, and all of a sudden it's all been turned off. No coding, no programming, no software updates. No, it's all gone off. Yeah, it's very difficult. So staying a bit wider in that instance, if we're talking about specialising is the right thing to do. Yeah, specialise in few things, probably not maybe just in the one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we had the same with Otis for a fortnight last year, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Where you couldn't get any tickets, you couldn't get onto Otis for a fortnight last year. If you were a VW specialist, you'd be cracking out the VAGCOM again to try and do your best with that.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, because you'd be stuffed with that Otis.
I think
that's a specialist. So
it's the danger with the cloud-based. Everyone's gone cloud-based because it offers that benefit of being accessible from multiple platforms from almost anywhere. But I think there are lots of instances where the cloud has let us down, or the technology or the infrastructure doesn't work, and it's difficult as an independent. I mean, whose big red telephone should we be ringing as independent garages that can't access that stuff? And we'll have the little conversation about there's nobody really representing garages in that terms. So do you phone up the IMI or the RMI or the AA or the RAC? Kind of who do you call to say, look, this is really damaging my business here, and they're also now not compliant with type approval and freedom of repair. They've sunk the ship here for a minute. Who goes banging on the door going, hang on a minute, we've got 43,000 garages here in Italy or Spain or France that can't access your tool, and it's harming their business.
Don't think there is anybody really representing us on that score directly, is there?
Who takes an interest from any of that bodies about dealer tooling and access?
The consumer eventually, but it takes a long time to
get there.
Yeah, but as a trade body that represents us, they all should, is the answer. But I don't think there's, personal view here, I don't know that there's anybody inside those camps that's actually looking at the garages. I mean, we would be very supportful if somebody came along and said, when there's a dealer tool issue, we will collate, right, we've got 400 people that are in trouble. It's time to break out our contact at Stellantis and give them a bit of therapy on the phone.
They don't have a contact.
No.
There's more chance of me getting a contact than.
But I mean, the trade bodies are missing a trick there as technology is advanced. That we need some support in the grown-up level. It can't be just a garage calling. It has to be a body representing lots of garages to give them a ring and give them a bit of therapy. It's an interesting one that we've sort of circled round a little bit to the conversation we're having just up in the tea room there about. The other development that's coming along, we've touched on it once before in an episode about SERMI, this scheme of, security and maintenance registration. Do you think the body that's going to eventually be in charge of that in the UK here is the person that could also go and bang on the doors the other way? Because SERMI essentially is the motor manufacturers saying to a body or company, we want all your garages actually to be registered and secure. If that body that's doing that should also take on the obligation then, when we go, Stellantis are now shit the bed for 3 months, time for you to go banging on the door to rat-a-tat-tat.
And they absolutely should be.
Yeah.
because it's got to be a two-way street, and
Yeah.
they absolutely should be looking after our interests.
Yeah. So is that are we nominating that body for that role then, and saying whoever takes CERMI on? And currently it looks like the RMI are in that zone. They've set up a NAMAS accredited sort of body that's going to look after the registration. So it seems it's all a little bit ethereal because we don't really know. And we talked about one of the remote diag people are letting people know CERMI's coming. Yeah, should that be a qualification? If you're going to set up and run this CERMI scheme, we want a bit of right of reply here. We'll play your games and we'll fill the forms out. When it goes TU,
The standard needs to be set both ways, not just one way.
Awesome point. Yeah, so you have to have that standard going both ways. We'll jump through your hoops and sign in and give you our birth certificates. But when it goes offline, you can't disappear. You can't go on holiday for 3 months and go, yeah, we'll get that when we're back. And we're all stood there shouting, going, we can't.
Left in the wilderness.
Left in the wilderness, left high and dry. And I think that's a gap. And I think whoever gets the CERMI job, we ought to be thinking about making that, a statement. Garages are looking for it. How that would happen, I don't know, but it ought to be fair as fair, really, didn't it?
Yeah, we're not the only country with CERMI.
No.
How is everyone else getting on?
Yeah, and it's interesting with the European slant. It's really interesting that the CERMI's being, I'll say, ruled with a fist of iron. Really, that people have lost their CERMI regulation or qualification or entitlement through some behaviours that we would say they're not downright wrong, but they're kind of not best practice. They seem to be pulling people's account access through CERMI. So CERMI's a bit like a dog passport. Really, your garage gets a CERMI certificate that qualifies them as being reputable, and you get one CERMI certificate that's accepted almost like your doggy passport. You can go anywhere in Europe once you've got the passport. CERMI's like that for diag. So a company in the UK will host the CERMI scheme. We'll pay them handsome bucks to run the scheme, and we'll apply through them. They'll validate you are who you say you are. You've got your VAT registration or your business account, and they've got a photograph of you. They know who you are. That CERMI certificate is accepted by all the manufacturers, the other side, that you're valid to be able to log in. So it basically saves you having to apply for Bosch, apply for Volkswagen and Peugeot and Ford and which we do now. They are selling it in the scheme as you apply once and get one badge of honour, and then everyone, the other side, the OE side, accepts it. Mm-hmm. And in a way, that's awesome, because that then is the focus if we have a problem. So on my Land Rover tool has stopped working. CERMI, go back there and give Land Rover a kicking because it doesn't work, or in our case, Peugeot.
Can they do that, though?
Well, this is it. No.
Are they just going to police it and clamp down and not allow a two-way conversation?
Yeah, clamping down to the left but not clamping up to the right is kind of a bit odd, isn't it, I would think. And maybe the scheme is meant that way, but I think what it looks like is the scheme is in mainland Europe. All the dates have come through when they've been rolling out since sort of July last year, and the manufacturers that are using CERMI are kind of falling into line. Countries also have got this variable scale of when they're implementing it. The UK actually sits outside any real official legal agreement because they're no longer part of the European Union. So the scheme is not mandated in legislation; it's voluntary. But what we think will happen is this is hence the remote company that's put those posts on Facebook recently are saying, actually, lads, it's almost going to be enforced because Land Rover, let's say, across the whole of Europe have got all their garages in CERMI, and it's only the UK that aren't doing it. We'll be dragged along rather than be it mandated. And I think I can see that being an issue, that if you haven't applied for your CERMI authorization, you won't be able to log in and do those component protections and keys. But it's interesting, I think, with currently with the Peugeot situation, where's the right of reply the other way? If there's a scheme for every garage to be part of, then that has to be the conduit to go the other way, doesn't it? If they're saying that's the official route to communicate with garages, we ought to be going, well, that's the official route for garages to communicate with the OEs. So whether it will happen or not, I don't know, but it seems very convenient that should be the case. But CERMI's a very interesting one. I think the remote... Anyone using remote diag?
Used to, but not so much now. We bought a few OE tools, and that seems to cover majority of things.
Of what you need to do, because they've got a good place in the market. If you're getting the oddball car, some of the weird stuff like Nissan and Renault and MG for the electric stuff, where it's difficult to buy the diag, they've got a really good place if you're a specialist to use them to do the difficult diag. I think if you look the other way to independent garages, so look at some of your own garage customers who maybe wouldn't have the chutzpah to apply to Volkswagen or to Peugeot to get the Surmi, to get the diag. I think a lot of the lower level garages are using Oscars and Core Diagnostics and those remote sessions to do secure gateway and other things. And that's probably a bit of a pressure point for some of the remote companies, because where are they left? If the manufacturer says, Fred's garage over there in Taunton has to have Surmi if you want to code a key for him, otherwise he shouldn't be doing it because we don't know who he is and we don't know what the security angle is. The remote companies are kind of sat there in the middle, probably going, we need to encourage Fred's garage to get Surmi authentication, otherwise we won't be able to support him. And Fred's garage is kind of going, well, I don't want to do that because I would do it for myself. Like Terry's saying, they bought their own tools, they've gone through the applications, they've got the tools. I think those companies are in probably a bit of a tricky position with the Surmi. Probably it might be a bit like DeepSeek, Rob, and OpenAI, that what could sink that business is if manufacturers say, unless you've got your own Surmi, you can't have a remote session.
I would wager that in time the vehicle manufacturers will wipe out the remote services, because I think they won't be able to police it themselves, which is what they want and part of what Surmi's all about and part of what authenticating garages is all about for the manufacturers, to try to only have reputable garages, if you want to call it that, doing diagnostics through their equipment and their servers. But also it goes further than that into the whole thing of second-hand parts, the risk of stolen parts and all this sort of thing being fitted to cars and coded to cars. So once you take all of that into account, the vehicle manufacturers could almost find themselves accused of being complicit in the supply of illegal or stolen parts being fitted to vehicles. So their way out of that would be to try and make it so as they can only deal direct with the garages, which means that the third party sort of dial-in diagnostic people would have to be cut out of the equation.
Or they'd have to validate their end users had Surmi independently.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd have to be, which, as you say, then you're almost at the point where, well, you might as well have the kit to do it, and do it yourself.
Yeah, we talk. A really interesting thing that sprung to mind as you were saying there, Rob, about the used parts. Has anyone heard about the difficulty, or how Volkswagen in particular group are making it more difficult for used parts? I saw some stuff from some people recently saying that the authentication process when you go to code a used unit pops you into a form that you fill out and send in, and then they're being rejected at a higher frequency, even when potentially it should be okay. That they're pushing back. I think it's been happening for a while, but I see there's an upstep in that. They're really, really not happy with used parts being fitted.
That's all right. That's steering you towards new parts. But if the new part's not available, what are you doing?
That's what I mean. That's one of the implications.
And then we're having to find other forms of tooling to carry out that function that we want to do, because we know that the channels we thought we'd be able to use aren't allowing us to do it. Yeah,
it's dodgy. It's risky. I mean, I can see from Volkswagen's point of view, it's kind of a virtuous circuit. So Marc can't go online and buy his used BCM, but if he could code it in. If he had Otis, that was kind of the way it worked. Now they seem to be saying no, that's not possible. But on the flip side, what are part supplies like from OEs, and particularly electronic parts? Has that ever recovered from the COVID farce?
No, I don't think so. No,
we're kind of on the long finger there, aren't we? It'll be
probably worse. Probably worse actually now.
Yeah. I think so. One of the things that I do a lot is wiring loom replacement, and so we've been talking about this earlier on. And certain Skoda Yeti's driver's door looms, really common failure. Can't get them because of where they were made. With a blue and yellow flag, and say said, yes, we've got some stock, but we can't sell them you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of things that, there's going to have to be workarounds, whether they like it or not, because people aren't just going to scrap cars, and it doesn't make any sense. If you can't talk about environment on one hand and say, oh, well, your car's done 7 years, 100,000 miles, it's now got to be scrapped. That's it, when it's perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, because of course the ultimate green green car is that it perpetuates. You don't make another car. That one goes on until it's absolutely falling to bits. So 200,000 miles at 15 or 300,000 miles at 20 years is much greener than a new car every 12, 15, 18 years, and I think they're forcing that scrappage. Yeah, because of electronic parts, and if they're squeezing the electronic parts reuse because they want to sell, they've had a policy decision, they're kind of revved up by CERMI and think it's the right thing to do without realising the implications that somebody in a 15-year-old car that can't get a BCM, can't not have the car. It opens up the back door, if you like, so we've all got solutions and we can go into the hexadecimal or the binary and change VIN numbers and get round it if we want to. We don't want to do that, but they're kind of leaving us no option. Going the official route to do a second-hand part swap from a valid source of used parts to a car that needs that bit has to retain open. And I think for me, in the job of CERMI scheme organiser, that's another thing. They ought to be going back the other way and saying,
should that not be sort of incorporated within that right to repair that they've brought out?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, but nobody's policing it.
Nah, there's no way you police that.
No.
But then you're opening up then, if you can't go down the official route, you're just going to clone the module.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But you're going to clone it and find a way. There are tools out there, but it's not our preferred. We would rather support the manufacturer's way of doing it, have it coded in properly, have it going through, the online coding session and making sure it's great, having the update afterwards, rather than doing it the ad hoc way, the offline method, just to get the solution. They're driving the industry towards more, I would say in inverted commas, less open practices to solve the problem for the customer, to get that car working and fixed. We're actually going away from the OE way of doing it, and that's crazy. They're kind of dividing the industry and not joining it together. So
we're pushing people into the underworld. Almost, really. I want
CERMI on one hand. I want CERMI on one hand that you can have access to our server, but I'm not going to allow you to use fit a used part on it. So you're going to have to get your very dodgy hacky gear from wherever it comes and code it offline. It's just crazy, isn't it? Bonkers. Yeah, but part supply in itself, if it's not even electronic, it was vaguely electrical. I mean, look at the AdBlue Fast with NOx sensors and tanks and everything that surrounds that. How on earth have you got a car that's less than 10 years old not supported with parts? And then AdBlue solutions are coming to the fore.
And 1,200 quid for a plastic tank with a pump in it.
Yeah.
Where do they get off with those sort of prices?
Profiteering.
Trying to
where it's
push cars off
all
the road.
one unit.
Yeah. Sealed units, no parts available, no green fix, nothing.
We've had a couple that also needed a superseded module to accompany the tank. And that was about $5,000.
That's a favourite one.
So almost trying to price the car off the road, aren't they, really?
Yeah.
And then no wonder customers on their own accord are going onto Google and Googling certain things to lead them in certain directions for.
A solution.
Solution. Software solution. At a fraction of the cost.
Cost. And
that's customer driven as well at the end of the day, because they're like, you say 4 years old. Yeah. It's going to be 40,000 miles. Still an amazing amount of
life left in it.
Residual value left in the vehicle, but we can't get to the fix.
No. It's bonkers, and you're encouraging them then to transgress. The car isn't strictly legal then because they've had a solution, but it's the lights off and they can use it for work.
Yeah,
it's
so that's back to the problem and solution and the fee.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a sort of circular, and they're key issues I think that face car owners and garages. And what you do as a garage owner when you get that client looking at you with doe eyes that the car's got an AdBlue light on, it needs a tank which you can't get. The tank when you can get it's $4,000 and it's gone on the sometime never pile. Hang on, I need a car for work tomorrow to to earn my money, to pay my rent, to look after the kids. You know, it puts the garages in a very difficult position, and you can see why some say, you know, well, there is, you know, I've seen AdBlue solutions. The client will say, and what do you say to that? You go, well, no, actually, walk to work or don't go to work and let your family be thrown out on the homeless and, you know, get your house repossessed, because at least then you're following the letter of the law. It's bang crazy, isn't it? It's batshit crazy. Yeah.
Who's policing that?
No one.
There's no MOT regulation that's getting involved in that yet?
No, not yet. No, I think we'll see particle counters, which are, you know, 15 years, 20 years too late for DPFs, are just coming this year or next. So we'll start measuring particle counters when really we should also be measuring NOx. But again, I think you can't punish a car owner that can't get parts for the car by failing the MOT on this measure that you haven't also taken care of the parts are available to fix it properly. It just doesn't work. And I think we live that lie, if you like, in inverted commas, day in, day out, with people and cars and faults and bits you can't get and things you can't code in because the dealer tool doesn't work. It's kind of a mess when you look at it. You get depressed if you thought too long, wouldn't you? Yeah, so
it's not an easy trade to be in.
No, because you're the focus really of the attention of that person with the broken car needing to get to work. You know, we all have to be highly empathetic of that. And you look at, you know, what's the answer? Well, nobody gives a shit. All the grown-ups don't care. Really, that's what we've got to say. So,
well, the VMs don't care, do they? Because you know they're just seeing pound signs to get either the cost of the parts or get the vehicle off the road because they want to sell a new one.
Or I think maybe, Rob, more so now, there are big fires under their own asses on so many other counts that kind of looking after a 15-year-old car is not the main priority. They're all coming out saying, look, if you force us down the EV route, we won't be here in 2 years. Or like you've seen, the Japanese manufacturers have all gone together. Is it?
We said about that earlier.
Well, Honda and Nissan.
Honda and Nissan. Is it and Toyota?
No, just Honda and Nissan at this stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Toyota have stipulated that Nissan have got to ditch Renault if they're going to do that. So that means that to do that, Nissan will have to buy their 37%
of the Renault
stake that Renault have got back again, which is thought they haven't actually got enough money to do. No. So there might have to be a sort of a staged buyout to buy that back, and then Honda would then merge, take over really Nissan. But it was a couple of months ago, wasn't it, that Nissan announced they've basically got 14 months to live at the current rate of sales and costs and all the rest of it.
And potential penalties if they didn't meet the EV.
Exactly, the billions they're going to be paying in penalties and fines for EV sales failures and that sort of thing. So, but I think that's sort of the tip of the iceberg of where the industry currently is, because there isn't a single manufacturer, it would seem, that's in a good place over any of this. And many of them own billions at the moment worldwide.
And is that caused predominantly by this push towards electrification? Do we think that they're fearing that the fact they haven't got enough electric vehicles? If they have got enough electric vehicles, there are not enough people that want to buy them, because the electric vehicle bubble has sort of burst a little bit by governments changing and chopping about 2035, 2030, whether we are having an EV mandate, whether we're not. The manufacturers having very big long levers and going, if you want us to stop internal combustion engine, we kind of need 10 years notice to be able to do that. And transitioning car drivers to EV when they don't want it means that the market just dies on its ass, and then they're being told, well, if you don't sell EVs, even though your clients don't want them, you're going to have to pay a fine on every car, which means we'll kill your business. I mean, how crazy is that we got to that situation?
But yet, as a government, our government haven't got the infrastructure in place for us to support the EVs.
No, so we haven't got enough electricity, and we haven't got enough electricity in the right places to do it. But to be honest with you, the decline in the vehicle manufacturers' status has been an ongoing thing for really decades. A lot of it driven by the investments they've had to make in adding emission control systems to the cars, which in effect they can't charge for.
No.
You know, so they've got to make everything on the car cheaper and cheaper to still sell the cars at roughly the same money, despite putting thousands of pounds worth of emission control devices on the car. And then likewise, once we've now mandated that in order to meet 5-star Euro NCAP, cars have got to have at least 2 forms of ADAS right the way back to base model. So that means that stuff's got to be added again at almost no cost, which is why there aren't any dirt cheap cars anymore, because they've had to put the prices up anyway. But they simply can't charge full whack as they would if those were optional extras. So that means that they're making less and less on each car they're selling.
Yeah.
So they're reliant then on trying to sell the cars on PCP, finance or whatever, because they make more money out of that. And then you've got certain manufacturers, luxury car manufacturers out there and performance cars manufacturers that make more money out of selling their merchandise than they do out of actually selling the profit out of selling the vehicles. Yeah. So that's kind of crazy as well, you know, because they're not car manufacturers anymore. They're design houses.
But they've had to diversify to make it work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To make it.
Yeah, to make it
It's
profitable.
Like Mitsubishi is out of the UK.
Yeah.
Out of Europe completely.
So who's the smart player in the big market there? Yeah.
Yeah, they moved before it sunk them, I suppose.
And then your big players like Stellantis are just getting bigger and bigger. But
Well, they're buying up more weaker. Maybe you could say they're buying up more fragile companies, and themselves are becoming more fragile, bigger, but maybe not sturdy. And they're maybe seeing that opportunity, because if you look at what's happened, look at what's happened about them reporting, losses and potential short. Where is it going to end? You have to look at, I think we were talking about it earlier on, Rob, about Volkswagen are in trouble with some factories in Germany making cars. We're considering giving over the factories to the Chinese and saying, here's this factory with these staff. Can you run it? Because we can't shut it down kind of because of the labour laws. We don't want to shut it down because we missed the production. We can't afford to keep it open. They're in like an emergency.
And they can't sell it. Nobody wants to buy it.
Nobody wants to buy it. They can't sell it. And so you've opened up the door to the competitor. Really, you're giving them the keys to the kingdom. In a way, the Chinese are really intent on driving down the price and winning the market at all costs. Whatever your political persuasion is, whether that's for nefarious reasons or not, they're definitely not in it for the benevolence of the European nations. They're kind of trying to dominate the world, aren't they?
But aren't the Chinese almost doing what the Japanese did to the British car industry in the 70s by bringing in cheap, mass-produced cars that actually were just more reliable than ours as well, and as a result people were buying them. And then to some degree perhaps in the 80s, 90s, the Koreans were doing the same thing as well. The Koreans were swamping the market with cheap cars that by that time the Japanese cars were more expensive, so the Koreans had an in there. So to some degree the Chinese are doing it, but on probably an even bigger scale to more countries, not just us or Europe. They're doing it globally. So they're pretty much doing the same thing as the Japanese did and then the Koreans did. Probably the Vietnamese missed a bit of a trick there. Perhaps they should have done the same thing, because what the Japanese did and the Koreans did was they took advantage of the fact that when you lose a war, you get 50 years of import duty free trade with the rest of the world as a way of helping you rebuild your industry in your country. And that's exactly what the Japanese used for swamping the market in the 70s, and the Koreans did in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I wonder, has anybody worked on Chinese brands? So the probably the most famous one that we've got is the MG, where they took over MGs. Anyone worked on that stuff?
Only routine servicing and stuff. Really.
What do you make of it as a engineering solution to a car? Is it good quality? Is it?
I wouldn't say that. No.
Is it
cheap?
Made to a price.
Cheap, cheerful.
Yeah.
Obviously, getting hold of the parts. You're going to the dealers, just because not a lot is available for them.
No, in the aftermarket. No.
Yeah.
No. Could you see a garage? You hear often of specialising in Volkswagen or BMW, Mercedes. Do you reckon you could have a successful single brand Chinese car?
Don't think there's enough of them yet.
Not enough of them, no.
No.
Has anyone seen any of the BYD stuff? They seem to be having a big push across the country.
Yeah.
Build your dreams. No, there's one one's opened up locally here, and the local Mercedes have kind of swapped to BYD. Yeah. I've not seen any of the product. I've talked to people who've seen it and said it's okay.
Some of it's very clever, got a lot of tech in them.
Yeah.
I think it remains to be seen what the quality actually comes out like. But the one that I sat in, which was like I can't remember what it was called, but it was like an SUV. Very nice inside and very, on the face of it, looks very well built. But it would be interesting to see the longevity of these things. Frankly,
Are you seeing any in terms of volume? Do you think the volumes are still quite small in comparison to the European cars?
Yeah.
Definitely. There's not the infrastructure there to help the dealer networks, let alone the independents.
Part supply.
Parts supply. Even if you go to the dealer, sometimes
We can't get bits from.
you can't get bits. And like,
Really expensive, I find, the after support for parts.
and then the dealer support for certain functions through their dealer tooling didn't work.
No.
So how are we going to get on trying to do stuff?
Yeah, I see that kind of stuck. So it probably not in terms of our medium-term strategy. Specialising in a Chinese car brand as your future may not be the thing to do just yet.
Not unless you have a lot of dealer knowledge, or you're coming out of a dealer, maybe.
or a dealer near you where they might actually be. You've got a little pocket of a number of, quite a lot of sales in that area.
Doing the old car park count to see if it's worth doing. But I know some of the dealer tools. So trying to get that MG dealer tool is particularly difficult. Even if you wanted to offer that as a service, they don't seem to be keen to play to the European rules of open and free access to the tool at a reasonable cost, irrespective of what CERMI might make it more difficult or not. But some of those tools are difficult to get, aren't they? So I wonder, how long they'll live in the market if they're not being well supported. As Terry said, you can't get parts from them. As Marc said, you can get the parts and you can get the tool, but it doesn't do the function. Where does that leave the client? I think you'd be bitten once maybe by that brand, wouldn't you? If you were owning one and you couldn't get bits for it, and then you took it to the garage and they couldn't do the coding or enabling it, you're kind of going to get bored with that pretty quick.
Yeah, you're not going to go and buy another one, are you? If you're struggling with maintenance and spares for it, you're not going to buy another one if that's the case.
And I'm not sure if we go back in time, even when we had proliferation of, maybe the Japanese cars and the Korean cars, there never seemed to be a problem with supply. They really set up dealer networks that were quite good. The technology was reliable, and you could get the dealer tooling. You could get access to that sort of stuff.
And even if you couldn't, often the aftermarket tools
would do it.
Would be covering most of those things anyway. And there was a time when when Honda were first putting PGM-FI on their cars, you didn't need a tool at all because it flashed a little paper clip and flashed the LED on the ECU. It was kind of, for the time, it was relatively easy.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Actually, we can go back to the sort of 80s and then forward to the 2020s. Talking about ease of use, we've covered a bit of dealer tooling and how it's awkward. What's everyone's perspective on the way that Tesla are doing it? Because that's probably one of the biggest EV brands out there where their tool is built into the car. So you don't need necessarily dealer tooling.
Well, it's like, I think, why do we need anything for any vehicle? Because pretty much every new vehicle has got a screen in there, which is directly on the network in the vehicle.
Yep.
It should be a simple case of, you can just call up its diagnostic functions, say, that's it, say, why do we need aftermarket scan tools? It's already built into the car.
Yeah.
Why do we need dealer scan tools then?
Yeah, that's the point.
That's the thing. Yeah, really, any of them. Yeah. Or at worst, you have a program on your laptop and an RJ45 cable that's connected straight to the car or via Wi-Fi to the car.
But very true point. The onboard diag is done by the onboard computing. The scan tool that we get is really just a remote display, isn't it? It's got communications.
It's only plucking codes out of the ECUs, which they're in the ECU anyway. So you're right, yeah.
So we think that's probably and of course you're not going to need CERMI for any of that stuff because it's all in the car. It's not you doing it, it's the car doing it. If all the functions are built into the car and you can access the service manual, surely that's got to be a way giving the client, the car owner, if you like, is the end client, probably better service if the garage can bob in there and get the service codes and do the diag.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it for the dealers, it's for the manufacturers, they're dealing with their own system. Say if you need to do anything more than say if you've got a repair to do, you can go into it as a technician, read the codes, perform the fix, clear the codes, and then why can't that do the authentication? If you need to be security registered for a particular task, then you follow the procedure, you fit the part, and the system contacts the server. You put your authentication details in. It says, yes, like the new part, it's coded to the car, done. Say there's no reason why you can't.
No.
Because the amount of computing power that's in there for the sat-nav and the voice control is orders of magnitude higher than what it needs for scan tool functionality.
Yeah. So that could be the answer, do you reckon?
I think there's the obvious answer to that one is the vehicle manufacturers don't want Joe Public to have access to that, which they potentially could, because once you've got an authorization code that's sitting out there on the internet that they can find on the Owners Club website, you'll have the car owners doing the same as they do when they go and buy a VAGCOM. They'll be doing their own. They'll be doing their own diagnostics and coding and programming and all that sort of stuff. But there's no reason why. Quite simply, the car is a computer on wheels, all on its own anyway. All it needs is a connector in it, which can be just a network connector. It connects by network to your laptop, and you use the dealer software to interface with the car. Job done. We don't actually need an interface even. No. Most cars, certainly most modern cars, are now using internet protocol communications within the vehicle itself, so it could easily talk by the same protocols, DOIP effectively, to our laptop, and the dealers have still got, or the manufacturers have still got control of that by having a dealer software interface with the car, that then stops the public being able to have access directly.
I think the public access might be a bit of a red herring, but I think there's probably another. If you think of Volkswagen and their, not particularly, but they are affected. PSA have got the same issue when your central display kind of folds up and goes tits up. What happens to your? That's your diag interface gone belly up as well. You end up,
or when it's bricked by an update.
When it's bricked by an update. Well, don't talk to me about bricked by an update. The ID3 saga unfolded, and bricked by an update. We'll maybe cover that in a minute. But if the interface went down and it was the central kind of, you have to replace the interface before you can do the diag on why the interface didn't work. So there is probably a little loop of doom there. But in most cases, having the access to the cars on board through just a cable and plugging it into a separate display, I really don't get all these other protocol kind of security stuff. Yeah, maybe authenticate the person. That might be the answer going forward, because then it didn't, I suppose you'd still get the same issue if, like we've got with PSA, if there was a problem with authenticating the server where nobody could log in, it wouldn't matter if it's a laptop that can't gain server access or the car, I suppose. Yeah, but I like the groove of that. I think that works quite well. And Tesla are clever enough, I think, to know that they don't have a dealer network to support everybody. They're relying on garages, independents like ourselves, to get into looking after and maintaining Tesla. And they're sort of making it easy so the customer will actually buy a second and a third one, not like the MG situation where it's a gazillion pounds for this very simple part and you can't have it till 3 weeks next year. It's just not coming. So I think Tesla probably have got a model there that works quite well. And maybe some of the other OEMs could pick up that as a hint or tip. Don't why duplicate all of that stuff?
No technicians, no salesmen.
No.
Bought online.
Yeah,
we'll show you it.
Yeah,
we'll let you drive it.
Yeah,
but just go online and buy it.
That's it, and then pick it up from the docks, and then book it in to the agent off on your phone. Just leave it in the car park, and someone will come out and fettle it, and then you get a phone call from the technician working on your car when it's done. If you look at it, Andrew, who was here early in the week, kind of put it. You're actually dealing with a software company that makes cars, not a car company. So, kind of, you bought an Apple laptop or something, you can go to the Apple shop and they'll show you how it works, but it can turn up remotely. There is nothing to do. There is no salesman. You can't have a deal on it. It is the price. Have it, deliver it. We'll look after it. That there is that. That's an interesting, refreshing view, I suppose, on cars. Talking of that, has anybody got into Tesla, doing a few Tesla, or maybe wider EV? Are you seeing that as a proportion of work? Are you getting any more?
Hybrids more than EV.
Hybrids, yeah.
I think that's down to the proliferation of hybrids compared to EVs.
Yeah.
Overall, anyway, you only have to look at the sales figures and that.
Not many EVs filtering through to me yet.
No, well,
not full EVs.
I did some work on the market share, and they reckon last year's data said it was about 3%. So 97 out of 100 cars are not EV. So you'd have, for every 100 cars you might see 3 that are. So I think the proliferation is quite low, and it's an interesting other one that people are we're getting revved up for EV, and we're going to be EV prepared in the garage. And looking then, the sales were pretty dismal. People weren't uptaking, and actually the frequency of EVs that are landing on the doorstep just probably aren't there. And I think, Simon, you're in a great position doing lots of trade work. So your perspective on other EVs out there, if you're doing work for 10 other garages, you'd kind of get their EVs as well, wouldn't you? Because they wouldn't be necessarily into it. Are you seeing any EV work?
There's very, very small amount. Again, sort of like Marc says, so anything that is coming in is hybrid, or the very simple faults anyway. What I've seen, because I've had a couple of ID3s in from one of the local traders. One of them, I can't remember what it was that was wrong with it. It wasn't a crazy difficult fix, but they decided they didn't want to fix it, and I don't know if they returned it to the auction or something. They just didn't want to take the risk. So a lot of hybrids. Again, not difficult faults. See quite a few Priuses with like life expired batteries. So I've got one there that's waiting for a battery management controller that I need to get, because it sees a couple of cells intermittently going reverse when they clearly not. That's about it really. I was saying couple of BMWs that they've been what I call caused faults, where the vehicle's had other work done on it, and one of them was just like a connector not plugged back into one of the ECUs properly, but creating a powertrain fault. And it was just, logical process, as everything, and you find it, and there you go.
And fixed. I think generally there's probably a bit of charging, faults, batteries, age expired at the end of their life, charging, cell circuit management stuff. So cell sensing is another one where the onboard wiring loom inside is degraded. Water leaks causing insulation breakdowns in motors and cooling systems. Charging is another kind of common one where it won't charge, or the charge port has got an issue.
I find it's generally the actual charge cable,
Charge
9 times out of 10.
Or the socket.
I've seen a few of them just using 3-pin plugs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to 4 years old. So what have you been using to charge this thing all the time? Just a 3-pin plug off an extension lead in the garage. There's a problem.
Pins worn out and burnt away. And,
unreal.
Not a whole heap of difficult stuff, on the EV. So I think there's work trickling in, but mostly hybrids and relatively straightforward faults. Well, if you look at the cars, the kind of electric motor side of it's quite simple, isn't it? You get your head
of course, there's not an awful lot of servicing required. ID3, you change the cabin filter more than you do anything else. So obviously that lowers the amount of work we're going to see, or be expected to see from some of these pure EVs, of course.
There is a few big jobs out there.
Yeah.
We changed a heater module in a Jag I-Pace. They dropped the battery pack for that to get to it.
Nice.
So that was a good one for us. Like,
some of the jobs are big. Often the parts are quite expensive, and some of it's quite time consuming to do as well. But, and so they end up being expensive jobs.
But no worse than a clutch or an engine.
A rear crank main oil seal or something.
It's easier, cleaner.
Cleaner. Yeah, true. Yeah, no, it's very interesting stuff. We're coming towards the end of our time together. Would you believe we've been gassing for a chunk of time there? So conversation is really quite interesting, and thanks for your participation and contribution to the conversation. I'm going to go around the room now and ask you for, not necessarily based on what we've talked about, but if the things, giving the opportunity now for things that you think might need changing, if you had magic wishes and you could change stuff just by swooshing of the magic wand, things that you think are potentially wrong that could be improved in our industry, or something that you could make better, without actually having to do it. But if a wish could be made, what sort of things would you change? So I'm going to start with Marc, and I'm going to come around and we'll finish off with Rob at the other end. Marc, if there's something wrong or rotten in the industry that you'd want to...
Well, when we were first started to talk about what separates a good from a great garage,
yes,
and you touched on about the tooling versus the training, my wish would be that as a trade, we just invested a bit more in ourselves in the training to give a better representation of as a trade as a whole. Because obviously there's different varying degrees of vehicle repairers throughout our industry, and just if we could raise the standard, basically, that'd be just so we're not tired with all, there's a stigma, we're not tired with all the same brush.
Ironically, I think the Sermi thing could be a bit of a differentiator in that with the garage that kind of gives a shit, is going to do that, is going to be legitimate, is going to do that. Maybe if there was some element of training, we always hover a little bit around the licensing side of life, which is also interesting. Bearing in mind we're all here for Master Tech updates and continuing with your accreditation and showing the world that you're operating at the highest level. Yeah, I think that's one of the ways, isn't it? Differentiating your training is evidenced in your achieving the Master Technician accreditation and keeping going with that. I think maybe one of the ways is about that. You guys are shouting that from the top about your achievement, but making that more obvious to the world about you particularly as a tech, and your garage represents that higher level. That's for me maybe one of the jobs our friends at the IMI could do a bit better with, raising public awareness of what a Master Tech is and the level that you've achieved and attained, and demonstrating repetitively that you're operating at that level would be one of the ways, I think. Yeah, pushing on, and you supporting that with what you're doing and achieving that, kind of shouting that out to help yourself. But it would be good. Maybe some of that Sermi stuff that you have to be at a set level before they'll let you in to use the tools, that would gearing some level of access or differentiation. Your average garage maybe, or the garages that don't do training, that did their first level of training, have never done any more since, kind of portrays the same image as you guys that are master technicians smashing out difficult work and helping people maintain their cars. How do you get that over to Joe Public, I suppose, is one of the challenges. But yeah, Master Tech and shouting that loud and proud is one of the ways. Awesome. Thanks, Marc.
No problem.
Simon, what are you thinking?
Yeah, say going on with what Marc said, say within my local area, there's a massive skills difference between the garages. So there's quite a few that I know that have been formally trained. Probably as far as college, I don't think many have gone as far as Diag Tech and Master Tech. And then you've got there's a huge number that I believe haven't got any qualifications at all. Now, I mean, I did things a completely different route. That I actually got the training here. I'd done some of the more basic training, in the background, prior to that, and I'd got the training here before I opened the workshop. I'd during the time, after I'd done the Diag Tech, I was, doing a bit bit mobile work, but it just didn't suit me. Say the working environment wasn't right. So you go places and there's no workshop space for you. They expect you to work outside, and it's like the weather's always too something. It's like too hot, too cold, too windy, too wet, too sunny. It's never right. So it was a point of I had to have a workshop, and it's not the prettiest workshop, but it's got brilliant lighting, and it's heated, and it's right for me. And I need somebody else to. I need a second tech for the amount of work.
Yes. How's that going? Have you got anybody in the frame?
I've got a young lad, as a trainee at the moment, but he's only just starting to learn. He's not got much of an electrical background, so it is starting from the very beginning with him. But say it's one of those that if I could have, even somebody, somebody at a service tech level who I could say, right, strip that down for me, get me access to that, replace that part. Now I know. Now I've diagnosed it. That sort of thing. Yeah. I could easily cover their wages and admin costs. To get because the productivity had more than doubled.
Yes. Yeah.
But
are you having trouble finding that?
Yeah, I mean, say there's a lot of people, that local, say you mention anything electrical to them, and they just run away. Say no, I'll stick to my brake pads and my oil.
Like a silver cross to a vampire, if you mention the word electrics.
Yeah.
So yours would be more about. So you mentioned there. So there are garages in your locale which don't have any training at all. How do your customers choose? What do we need? What does the industry need to do to be able to help us differentiate? Do you think, Simon?
Well, I mean, the problem is you've always got this competition on price, and I mean, my rates are higher than what I mean. So they're much higher than these unqualified people. They're higher than most of the decent general service garages in the area, but when you look at
field, though, isn't it?
When you look at a lot of the repairs that come in and what they've done to try and fix them in the first place, I mean, it's like some of the ones that we've been talking about where it's a simple connection problem, and somebody's in multiple cases they've thrown an ECU kit at it to not fix it, and so. What would have been? Well, I told the guy it was like it would have been £120 for diagnostic and repair for that original fault had they not dug a bigger hole.
Yes, yeah.
And so their end bill was 5 times that. Not all from me, but from other money they'd wasted as well on the ECU kit.
Yeah.
So let's say it was 6 times. No, sorry. Yeah, pretty much 6 times that
to get the fix.
To get the fix, because they couldn't wait the time that I'd said before I could get the vehicle in. So what was a simple? Well, we can get it started with a bypass. We know that much. Came in on a recovery truck and going, well. Why? And then you start, you start peeling the onion and go, well,
the story comes out.
Yeah.
So in that case, the customer was kind of impatient and then ended up going down the wrong route. But how I suppose, in a way, one of the questions would be, how would they choose a good garage over a garage that's going to guess? Because there are lots of garages out there that maybe aren't skilled to that level that would take on a job that's beyond their capability.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the local garages now, they'll, if they don't like the sound of it, they'll send them my way. They won't even book it in.
Yeah.
Some of them will book it in and go, right, well, can you do this one for us? And if they're already doing work on the vehicle and this is part of the job, they'll say, well, can we sub this part out to you? Or done one like that last week, and you said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just send the customer straight to you. But again, a lot of people just don't know. It's just pot luck.
Yeah.
But
is what you're saying? We need a good garage scheme.
Well, yeah, but it's like with all these schemes, they're, and it's the same with reviews and things. They can be manipulated, and I say I've got 1-star reviews, and I get more customers off those 1-star reviews because people, the people who've actually looked at what the 1-star reviews are, can't believe these people are being so petty and stupid, and then they've gone deeper into things and looked at, and they go, yeah, right. Yeah, this is the garage for me.
Sometimes it's down to your
response.
Answer, the response that you give to that 1-star review as well. And sometimes it's best to sort of sleep on the that review and then answer it sort of the next day.
Chat GPT to do it. Because Terry, what about you? What are you thinking about? If you had a magic wand that would solve the trade's ills, what would you swoop it near?
I suppose one thing would be direct contacts, like phone numbers for the manufacturer aftermarket support. That would definitely help. It's all well and good having emails, but I'm sure a lot of them just go straight into the junk box and never get looked at.
Never get, or like we spoke, maybe if there was an email, there's some level of service that has to be provided, and somebody, I think if you look at, I think the manufacturers are unregulated in their service towards us. No, there's no pressure for them to do it. Nobody's chasing up on them. We pay good money and get pretty poor service. It's really frustrating, isn't it? So I think I'd agree with that. We could have a big red telephone that the man at Stellantis, we could phone him at 2 a.m. and tear him off a strip about his piss poor server management and why we're still 3 months later waiting to get tickets and tokens. I'd buy that. I'd subscribe to that one. Awesome one.
But I think that actually goes further if you take it sort of one step further, that it's also a poor show from the manufacturers to their customers.
Absolutely.
As in the people who buy the cars. Because the customers are not getting good service from the dealers, from the manufacturers. That runs on because we sometimes can't help them enough as much as we would want to. Part supply comes back into it and that sort of thing again. So I think they're giving actually a pretty shoddy service to their own customers.
I think as we've covered loosely, I think there's lots of fires in lots of places we can't see, which is maybe why those things are affected negatively. And you'd have to say maybe we need a Donald Trump character to look after the independent aftermarket scan tool input to the tell them Stellantis we're coming to take over in Italy unless you get the service sorted out. Maybe that would shake some feathers. I think
even just them getting an aftermarket feedback from us, because they may see common things 3-5 years after the sale of the car, but what are they seeing that we're seeing?
There is. You're right. Actually, feeding back some of the TSBs that would be kind of on older vehicles where they stop really updating it, don't they?
Once it's out of the dealer network, they don't get the feedback, as you say.
No, which is where the DTTSB kind of comes into its own, doesn't it? Where they're seeing faults on older cars and collating that. No, good stuff. Marc, magic wand time. Where are you waggling your wand?
There's a few things being covered. That direct access, and then from what Simon's saying, I think I'm needing like a automotive master technician PA, rather than a technician, just a PA, to be able to assist, in what's going on, and then just everyone to maybe follow the passion that we have, and just show a bit of interest for the learning, and that'll drive us all on.
Maybe I often think that the people that are going to do that, and we're in that group. It's the big middle chunk that really, if you said get qualified and you have to have this level of training, could be diag tech, could be service tech, you have to have formal quals before you can set up a repairer. You can't really advertise your services as a garage unless you got some, because you're at risk of damaging the client's car, costing them too much money, bringing the trade into disrepute, and all the stuff we know that happens. Something I think has to be formalised around that.
But like, I could open a gym, a hotel, and a garage.
Yeah, you could
just go for it.
Yeah, you could, and that's right. But in some cases, you couldn't open up a boiler replacing company because you need training. There are some bits where safety comes into the gambit, where some trades have that. There's a safety issue here. Working on people's brakes and tyres and suspension is, in that dangerous level. But I think unless we get a bit of formal,
but then sometimes that's played down to
it is
not a high skilled job as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Because who's pushing it? I suppose the IMI are doing their bit there about raising the profile of the industry, and they've got their professional register and what we subscribe to in terms of maintaining diagnostic technician, master technician qualifications. Does that? I suppose then it comes up to, are they doing enough of a job to get that into Joe Public's consciousness that you ought to be having a technician that's on the register to fix your car?
Yeah, I think you've got to fly your own flag. Yeah,
you absolutely have to
promote yourself,
and
don't rely on anyone else to do it for you.
No, it'd be lovely to have that as a second tier, but I agree. You have to fly your own flag and put that out there and be known. Marc is in his area, and Simon is about you're the top guy because you've got training, education, experience, and you can do the job. Positive reinforcement of your reputation, despite the old wanky 1-star reviews from Fruitcake Simon, but you're pushing
that you've never met or never worked on their vehicle.
Yeah, good stuff. No, thanks for that, Marc. That was awesome. And Rob, last but not least, your magic wand. Where's it being waggled?
Those who know me, it's always about licensing. To be honest with you, I think that our industry has got a pretty bad reputation, unfortunately, that's been perpetuated over many years. Some of that quite legitimately, because there's a lot of cowboys in our industry, and I think that we've got to get our industry in order, frankly. There's no one going to do it for us, because none of the so-called governing bodies of our industry have ever actually stepped forward and said, yep, okay, we're going to introduce a licensing scheme and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, because they're all quite happy to take our money but not actually really give us anything for it. So I think that we do need some form of licensing scheme for garages and technicians, maybe, individual technicians to be working at a particular standard and above. Because just anybody can set up and work on people's brakes and tyres and everything, as you said earlier on. So I think that the way in which this industry, the only way in which this industry is going to get a better reputation is through that. But also through educating the public as well. And I think that's something we as individual garages have to try and do to educate the public, because most people don't realise they're driving around in the most complex of devices built by mankind. And they need to be educated about just how complex their vehicles are, and therefore how difficult our job is to work on them. And unfortunately, and it sounds a silly thing, but the media still perpetuates this spit and sawdust, grease monkey industry that we work in, instead of it being the high tech industry that it is. You see the Garages from Hell program, but there isn't a Garages from Heaven program. And even the way it's portrayed, our industry is portrayed in in popular media, such as Coronation Street and Dead Enders and so on, where they're these sort of little back street under the arches garages. That's not the way much of the modern industry actually is. It's been perpetuated, and I think we've got to, as an industry, pull our bloody socks up, frankly, and get out there, get more training, get more knowledge, get more professional in what we do.
Yeah, no, true. And what sprung to mind there as you're mentioning that, there's a very neat link between the ability to get insurance based on your competence to repair a car and the standard you work at. There's already a kind of model that exists if you linked training, education and the standard of the work you're doing to the fact whether or not you could get insurance to be, seen as being capable to be able to do that work. It seems like a really obvious link from over here without having to do it. And that's maybe the IMI or one of those guys can...
My business insurance has never once asked if I've got any qualifications whatsoever to work in this industry.
And here's the irony then, but they do care if you've got EVs in your workshop. How bonkers. I couldn't care
whether
if
it's
you're
going to go on fire.
Whether you're a butcher, a baker or a candlestick maker, as long as you don't park an EV inside overnight. I think that's the madness that where there isn't a standard. So, yeah.
I think probably the when you actually look at the price you pay for your indemnity cover for the workshop, the vehicles and so on, versus the element that is your public indemnity insurance at just a few £100 a year. The professional indemnity side, your public liability. I think that sort of says it all about how much they really care, because the big element is actually your road risks, your workshop, and all the rest of it. That's the expensive bit. Yeah. Your public indemnity insurance is actually just a few £100 a year, and so they probably don't really care, frankly, whether you're qualified or not.
No, that's where the emphasis of a trade body that's pushing standards up could help and could link it and could make that work. Yeah, so. Chaps, thanks very much for giving up your time this evening. I know it's been quite a long day for some of you with the assessments and what have you, so I really appreciate you staying on behind and having your word and sharing these conversations with the wider industry, in points that people haven't thought about maybe or have. Guys out there working on their own that are thinking stuff, we're providing that level of service and reflection. So thanks for giving up your time and participating. I know it's not easy for the first time if you've never done it before, so hats off, well done, thanks a million.
Yeah, thanks, James.
Cheers, James.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Cheers.